What's up, man?
Oh, what's the jazz topic for today to distract us from what we're actually here to do?
Let me think. I don't know if I told you last time I read a book by James Kaplan called I may have touched on it a little bit, but it's about the Kind of Blue recording session. Pick it up,
Oh,
read it. It's amazing because it kind of starts out with James as a young reporter. His brother's really connected. So he gets an assignment from Vogue to go interview Miles Davis and doesn't know anything about jazz. So this kid's got to walk into the lion's den and ends up stitching together this amazing book. He's done so many things over the years, and now he's a jazz aficionado. But it really comes from Miles's perspective, but examines Coltrane's life and Bill Evans's life and weaves everything together, and how the night that the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan was the beginning of the downslope of jazz. It's a real good cross examination of the most iconic album of all time against the tapestry of how did jazz turn into ECM in the 70s and become the quote jazz is dead, and how is it that we've arrived where we're at today. It's kind of cool.
what's the name of the book
It's called ah,
or the author?
it's James Kaplan. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of it. Let me just look real quick here. Um it's called Three Shades of Blue. Yeah, Three Shades of Blue. So but let's get into your life. Let's dive in. Let's get into the good business. And it's great to catch up for context for everyone out there. We had a very spirited jazz and conversation and about the world. So now we're going to get into your existence. And thank you for taking a minute, Ed. It's great to meet you again.
So much so that we had to reschedule the podcast. We took up all the time
Exactly.
talking jazz.
That's right. That's right. So let's get into your life. I want to begin our conversation with 4 years ago. We were trying to figure out how long this pandemic was going to last and what it was going to do to all of us. And now in this kind of quote unquote post pandemic era, how did you get through it and how did it change you?
Well, one of the ways that I got through it is that I've had a business for 20 years that I started with a business partner who sadly died during COVID. He didn't die of COVID, but he died during COVID. Um, and we've been doing this business for the past 20 years where we define what makes an organization uniquely remarkable in 7 words or less. And then once we have that one thing at its root that makes the organization uniquely remarkable, we use that expression to design how it's going to operate and how it's going to communicate. But what I did during COVID, I knew that our business was going to tank during COVID because people had more important things to do about the here and now than decide the defining and empowering future. So I got my coaching certification and I went out into the world as a generic coach. And I don't like being a generic anything, but I didn't know, I didn't know. But what I wondered was, how is the market going to talk to me? How is the market going to tell me to change? And it happened in the very first phone call with a prospect. The guy said, um, you know, the pandemic has got me rethinking my life. I don't like my career. I want a different life. I want to live a life of meaning and purpose. And I said, awesome. What's your purpose? And he said, I don't know. And what it made me realize is that I could take this sort of behemoth that I had created, co-created for companies, strip out the stuff that didn't pertain to an individual, add some stuff in that did pertain to an individual, and voila, I have an individual version of what I did for companies, so that you can decide, so that I can work with my clients one-on-one to define in 7 words or less what made them uniquely remarkable. One thing, everybody's got it. One thing that makes you uniquely remarkable, and then use that one thing to guide, to design a life of meaning and purpose, and then guide how they live that life. And then what happened was, about a year into doing that, so I had a whole bunch of clients, and we would start by defining what made them uniquely remarkable, their purpose, and then I would coach them through that filter. But I had a 4-time corporate client. I was having lunch with them, and he said, I have an online teaching infrastructure already created. We can plunk this on top of your individual blueprint, and we can offer it to people as an online course. Um, find your purpose in seven and define it in 7 words or less, and then use it to design a life of meaning and purpose. And so, how did I get my way through COVID? Well, by just sort of accidentally creating a new product, which resulted in a new company. And so now I've got two versions of what I do. Define your purpose as a company in 7 words or less and have that guide your existence, or define your purpose as an individual in 7 words or less and have that define your future.
So typically I would have you describe what you do to a bunch of third graders, but I think you've done a great job of doing that. So I got to ask you, what did you want to be in the third grade? When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You can't ask a Canadian that question. Every single Canadian boy is going to give you the same answer. I wanted to be an NHL hockey player.
That's right. That's right.
But if you're asking me about formative things, right? By the way, I have a lot of ambient noise here. Can you hear it?
Nope. Everything's
Okay,
good. Yeah.
Good. When I left university, my first job was as a copywriter in an advertising agency. It's a job I had no business having. I can write, I can explain things, but to have the breadth of a creative writer, I don't have that. So I would be sitting in front of my typewriter, and I know that ages me. I'd be sitting in front of my typewriter, and I would be writing drivel about my client's product or service. And I was frustrated. I recognized clearly that it was all cliche driven, and I hated it. I was trying to get to the authenticity about the client, the product, the service, or the brand, and all I was pumping out was cliches. And so I went to an art director and I said, "Can you make me a sign that says, 'Is this true?'" And I taped it to the wall behind my typewriter so that as I'm writing out these awful words, I have to constantly remind myself, is that true? Is that true? And sadly, it wasn't, which is why my career as a copywriter ended. But the lifelong striving to get to strip away everything, all the baffle gap, all that whatever, and just get to that nugget of authenticity, of truth about, originally I was obsessed for companies, products, services, brands. But now I've added the individual as an obsession as well, to get to the truth of who you are and be able to articulate it in 7 words or less. What is your secret sauce as an individual? Can you imagine, you walk around for 65 years like me, or however many years for you, or a 20-year-old coming out of college, or a 40-year-old housewife, 45-year-old housewife who finds herself with an empty nest and is now saying, what now?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To be able to articulate your superpower in 7 words or less as an individual, I think is just a remarkable thing to have as a human being, because nobody can ever take it away from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you in your career?
Well, I would say professionally, there are 3 people who I would want to identify as having a material impact. And I'm assuming you mean people your listeners might know.
Yeah.
As opposed to, my boss when I was 28.
Yeah.
So I would say, first of all, I'll give kudos to Simon Sinek and his book Start With Why and his TED Talk Start With Why. So if your listeners have not seen his original TED Talk Start With Why, it's fabulous. And it really, your purpose defined in 7 words or less could also be called your why defined in 7 words or less. And so Simon has created the awareness of the space that he and I and a few other people play in. So that's one. Pablo Picasso, certainly for his art, but more so, he really articulated what I'm all about, which is he said, he has a famous quote: the meaning of life is to find your gift, and your purpose is to share it with others, which I've just re-articulated to your purpose is to find your gift and share it with others. And that's what my two businesses are all about. As a business, find your gift and share it with the world. And as individuals, find your gift and share it with the world.
So I'm curious if
1 second, 1 second.
no,
Sorry.
no worries.
You may not be able to hear it, but it's a power saw.
Oh, it's okay. No worries. So I'm curious if everybody that's alive on the planet right now, if you can meet one person alive and spend some time with them, who would it be?
Let me think about that while I'm finishing my answer to your other question. So Peter
Sure.
Drucker, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's a guiding sort of philosophy of mine. Um, and as I said, Pablo Picasso. So Cynic, Picasso, and um, and I know who it is. I know who it is. I've often thought about this question. I've never been asked it in a podcast, but I've never been forced to answer it. And so it's actually two guys, but they're a team. Daniel Kahneman and Tversky. I can't remember Tversky's first name. But if you ever want to read an incredible book, um, it's called The Undoing Project. And it's by Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis has written a million books that have, that have become fabulous movies. But he wrote a book about Kahneman and Tversky. And then Kahneman wrote his own book called Thinking Fast and Slow. But these two guys were the fathers of heuristics and of figuring out, right? So if my quest is to get to the essential truth of a person or a product or a company, or just to get to the essential truth, these guys are the guys that identified all of the stuff that stop us from seeing the essential truth. And, so all of the biases, right? Like recency bias and all that stuff, they're the fathers of all of that. And I would love, sadly, Tversky is dead, but Kahneman's still alive. I would love to have a lunch with him and just like pick his brain.
I actually just reserved that book. I'm going to listen to it and I'll have a report back on you. I'm looking forward to it.
Can I make a suggestion in the order you read them?
Yes.
Because Michael Lewis is an absolutely gripping author.
Yeah.
It's nonfiction, but it's a page turner. You won't be able to put it down. And he explains complex concepts very simply. After you read him, then read Kahneman, which is still a good book, still well written, but drier.
Yeah.
But it's straight from the horse's mouth.
Okay. I love it. I will definitely do it. So, you've lived a life, an esteemed life of accomplishing and doing a lot of things. What is that motivation for you every day to do that? What gets you out of bed? What gets you to not only help your clients, but to also evolve as a human being?
Um, it's a very selfish thing. And it's the dopamine hit that I get from doing what I do. Right. And this is the part of my business that I am to this day unable to describe, but I'll introduce it in an anecdote. I was pitching to one of the most exclusive golf clubs in Canada. And all of the people on the board were McKinsey, Bain, KPMG, PW, all of that, right? And the chair said to me, what is it that interests you about getting our business? Is it if you do a good job with us, is it that you can pitch other clubs? And I just looked at him and I said, no, it's not that at all. It's how we change the people. It's how we're going to change you. You are going to think fundamentally different about what this business is and why you're here on this board. And that fundamentally different way of looking at this club is going to excite you. And I cause that. And I get a huge dopamine hit. So before I talk to you today, there's a woman in the UK that I'm working with to, to do this, to define her business as a purpose-driven business. And we got to her 7 words or less today. And the thing is, when you get to either a person or a business's 7 words or less, it's right because people say, "Oh my God, that's it, that's me, or that's us. Yes, yes, yes." And that's what she did this morning. And I changed her life by doing that. I know that sounds modest, but my process, and I've had that experience with hundreds of people and companies over the years, that exact same process. And when we get to that point and they say, "Oh my God, I now see the magic in what I do. And it's so much bigger. And I'm so excited by that." It's like, you made my day.
That's
This
it.
is what I live for.
That's it. So I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on a little bit of the jazz, which is our first conversation we had. So I got to know, jazz is obviously very much so a part of your world. What is the best jazz show you ever saw?
Oh, that's so easy. That is so easy. Um, uh, it starts with the second best jazz show, which is at a jazz festival here in Toronto. And Branford Marsalis was the headliner.
Wow.
And it was actually my girlfriend at the time who was the producer of the show. So I got to meet him. And but his performance, the band, they hadn't played together in 3 months. They hadn't really had a chance to practice. And I think that time apart had created magic. And then that was topped a couple of years later when I surprised her with a birthday present. So there is there's a performance hall here called Massey Hall, and it's world renowned for its acoustics. And it was Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock, just the two of them. They're two grand pianos on stage in the yin and yang, and they only played 5 songs, 2 in the first set, 2 in the second, and then an encore. But here's how it went. Every song was the same pattern. The first minute was just them, the intro, and they're going like this, and everyone who recognizes the song is applauding. But as all jazz songs do, it then drifts off into improvisation. And the two of them played like this the whole night, just looking at each other. What are you telling me through your eyes and your fingers and your sounds and your body language? Oh, I'm going to reply with this. And it was incredible. And that every single night, there's probably only 6 minutes or 8 minutes or 10 minutes of music that they play.
Yeah.
That isn't original.
Right.
And all the rest of it, you just saw that magic created in the moment by 2 people who are beyond gifted. But when they're looking at each other and feeding off each other, it just goes to a whole new level.
Totally.
That's it.
Does.
That was the show.
That's wonderful, man. So speaking of magic, you're in a position of giving clients good advice. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Ah, there should be tons of answers to this question. And uh, can you ask me another question and let me think about it?
Absolutely. So let's get your memory jogged here. Let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you. You can give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've led, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you impart on that young version of you? And would that version listen? Right? That's the caveat.
You just ruined the question.
I sucker punch that question.
you yeah. So okay, so the advice is easy. And that's live a life by design. Because I fell into every single career that I ended up in. And for the most part, I had a ball doing all the things I did. Um, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't live my life very differently if I had it all to do all over again. So what I would say, however you do that, is be intentional about your life.
Yeah.
Choose what you want. Don't wait for it to happen. Um, and I, uh, as much as I like my life, I would have lived a better life had I done that.
That's such a great answer, man. And it's so true. And I don't know that people realize that until you've lived a long time on this planet and you really want more out of it or you want to be intentional. So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I think that I am uh, interesting. Um, I would say that I am what would I say? So I would say that I am a well-intentioned person, loves to help people, right? Gets a big personal kick, so there's a payoff for me. And like all, and I'm describing something that's essentially positive, but like anything positive, it's a two-edged sword. So
Yeah.
I have the other side of the sword as well. So I have a bit of an edgy personality and that sort of thing. But I'm just uh, I I liked how my university girlfriend described me once when we were having a debate. She said, "You have strong opinions," and I was offended because I feel like I'm a may the best facts win person, and I am, right? But she said, and when I told her that bothered me because I'll change my mind. Just give me a better set of facts and I'll change my mind instantly. And she said, I didn't say firm opinions. I said strong opinions. Right. And then a business partner in a related comment said to me, it can be hard to get you to change your mind, but oh my God, when you do, you just totally swing to the other side because I've got a better set of facts. And
Yeah.
that's all I care about. It embarrasses me to hold a position that I can't support.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. So in the vein of obviously live music that you love, we get off this call, time machine pulls up in front of your house. You can go back in time and see any show, jazz, any other genre, any concert ever. Where are you going?
Led Zeppelin, 1972.
Okay, right on.
Yep. Yep. They're into their fifth album by that time. So they've got everything. I saw the Rolling Stones Exile on Main Street, arguably the best Stones album ever. I saw that concert in 72 with
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder as the warm-up band.
Wow.
Yeah. I think I would have liked to have I never saw Bowie either.
Wow, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But it wasn't jazz back then because I had not been introduced to jazz.
Yeah.
It was only 10 years ago that I was introduced to jazz by my girlfriend at the time.
And that's the thing about jazz. It's always kind of a late bloomer thing. I know I didn't get into it until my 20s. So do you want to circle back around to the best thing, best quote, best
I
advice you
do.
ever
I
got?
figured it out. But the
Okay.
other, the question I have about jazz is if it's dead or dying, why is it all the background music? There's something to it, right? It's always the background music.
Yeah.
That's where you hear jazz mostly, unless you go to a jazz club.
Yeah.
So I had somebody say to me, right? You know how it's so important for so many people to be right. I was one of those people. And my business partner at the time said to me, you're right. So what? And it made me realize that the desire to be right got in the way of so much good stuff.
Yeah.
And so I haven't cured myself of that, but I'm certainly much better than I was. And I'm at least conscious of it.
That's it. That's it, being cognizant for sure. Ian, if anyone wants to reach out, I know you have your websites down here. If they want to learn anything more about your world, the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, it's to those websites. So the 7words.biz, if you're a corporation and you want to be driven by that one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable, then go to 7words.biz. And if you're an individual and you want to discover your superpower and be driven by that for the rest of your life, then go to purposeu.co. Now, when you go to PurposeU, all you're going to see there is a page that says, hey, coming soon, leave us your email. It looks like it's going to be mid to late summer when we launch because we're building AI into it, and my mind is just blown
Yeah.
at how cool it is
Yeah.
with AI built into it. So
Yeah.
you can leave your email, and we will notify you the minute it drops, the course drops.
So as in life, everything comes full circle. I'd love to pick up a conversation with you again, jazz centric. Okay. So let's talk about the James Kaplan book, and then we can just open up the improv machine and start going after a little bit of jazz. So if you're up for it, let's reconvene here in about 2 or 3 months.
Oh, I would love to do that because what I'll do is I'll bring a classic rock bent to the conversation,
I love it.
right? Because one of my favorite all-time bands is the Allman Brothers,
Yeah. Yeah. I dig it. I totally.
heavily influenced by jazz.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's been a lot of cats that have been influenced by it. And we'll get into that because even the drummer of Smashing Pumpkins is a jazz enthusiast now. Jimmy Chamberlain plays in a band. I mean, there's all these guys that were chain class. Anyway, that's a whole other can of improv worms that we can explode on the next one. But Ian, it's so great to delve into your world, your life, the important good work you're doing. Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure again.
Thank you so much. I've loved talking to you. And let me just ask you one question before you
Please.
go.
Yeah.
Favorite jazz drummer?
Oh man. Okay, all right. So there's jazz and there's otherwise. I really love the dude that is in Dave Matthews Band. That guy blows me away every time I see him play. I can't remember
Hmm.
his name, but that cat is just stellar. Um, I love Ringo. I think he's underrated. And I know it's not
Totally
jazz.
underrated. You know what the
Totally.
thing about Ringo is? He's not a good drummer, but he's a great drummer for Beatles music.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There you go. What well said. But in
He
the
understood them.
Yeah, right, exactly. I have to go with Art Blakey. The ability to lead a band, the ability to hit the skins the way he did, the ability to have that infectious groove. And I will leave you with the jazz story on the way out. The great and wonderful Bobby Watson, the living legend that we are lucky to have in Kansas City. I
Mhm.
interviewed him years ago, and he talked about how he was on tour and they were in Germany, and Art was the oldest of all of them, but wanted to party the longest. So they went to a club, and he said that he'll never get this image of Art walking through the fog in Germany going to a dance club and was just had the most vigor and energy of any cat around, and he was ready to dance his ass off. He was
Oh,
going to
that's funny.
sweat it out. So I always, when I think about Art, I think about that, but I think Art, he brought so many careers to light. He was so good on the drums, and he was a band leader. Like, he had so much going on behind the kit. So I would have to say Art. So
Sweet.
yeah.
I would say Bill Bruford.
Okay.
And I'll send you a clip. I'm not going to go into detail. I know we have to shut down here,
Sure.
but I'll send you a clip that explains why.
I love it. Ian, it's always a pleasure. We'll catch back up, man.
We will, and I want to do that jazz conversation.
100%, man. Cheers, sir.
Thank you so much.